Should we talk Red Joan?
Let's talk about the very different Red Joan, which is a period spy drama directed by Trevor Nunn, who's the former artistic director of the Royal Shakespeare Company, the Royal National Theatre, the Theatre Royal Haymarket as well. He very occasionally will dabble in films too. I think this is his first proper feature since an adaptation of Twelfth Night in 1996. So it's been a while since he's been behind the camera.
Does it show?
It does show, unfortunately.
Oh dear.
This stars Judi Dench and Sophie Cookson as the title character, Joan Stanley, which it's been adapted from a novel by Jenny Rooney by Lindsay Shapiro. And the idea is that this lady, this is based on a true story where this lady called Melita Norwood was rumbled, or outed rather. She was rumbled earlier, but she was only publicly outed as a KGB spy in her 80s. So this was, I think, happened in 1999. This was the granny spy. She was also known as the Bolshevik of Bexley Heath, the spy who came in from the co-op. I mean, it's just a really strange and intriguing tale that someone could have been a civil servant in her 20s and 30s, passed nuclear secrets from the UK to the Soviets, and then lived with this for decades, and then would be outed at the end of their life. And actually, Melita Norwood's real response to this was, what's the fuss about? What's the big deal? She sort of saw it as being completely uncontroversial, I think. So that's what that's what the source of this story is. The film begins with Judi Dench sitting at home, basically, I think, aware that her time is up and that she's about to be rumbled. And sure enough, she's arrested and taken off to the police station, and she's questioned about her previous life. And here is that happening in a clip.
Mrs. Stanley, at Cambridge you were known to consort with communists and attend their meetings and their film showings.
Oh, is that what all this is about? Well, everybody did it back then, even if the films were dreadful. Not that you could say it, but it was the in thing. The world was so different then. You've no idea.
So tell me, Mrs. Stanley, would you describe your father as a socialist?
Goodness. Well, he was a headmaster. He cared for the ordinary man. He'd seen the Jarrow marches pass through the town. But socialist, no.
So who politicised you then?
It's a peculiar way of putting it.
So this slightly fumbling confession is used as the framework on which to hang these extended flashbacks back to Joan's previous life in the 1930s and 40s, starting with her time at Cambridge. Actually, the inspiration for the story was never at Cambridge at all, but I think this is to bring it more over into this idea of the Cambridge spy ring and just try and inject a little bit of excitement, a little bit of extra, sex it up slightly just by doing that. So you have Sophie Cookson, who was one of the young spies in the Kingsman films. She starts out as Joan at Cambridge. She's befriended by this very glamorous communist woman called Sonia, who's played by Teresa Serbova. And then she falls for her cousin Leo, who's played by Tom Hughes. And they are the people who, in effect, radicalise her. The radicalisation involves going to the left-wing film club, singing the red flag, and then watching Battleship Potemkin. That's how it happens. So watch out, kids, because it's a slippery slope from there.
Watch out the films you watch.
Later, she gets this job at the Home Office. She becomes a civil servant, and then she's brought over into the top secret British atomic weapons scheme. And she falls in love with a very nice man, a professor who's working on there called Stephen, who's acted by Stephen Campbell Moore. And then she is presented with this moral dilemma. She has the communist sympathies. She suddenly has access to this top secret information. So what's she going to do with it? And of course, she decides to leak it. Now, the film spends a very, very long time in the past. And for me, the interesting part of the story is the present, because it's this idea that someone's been living with it, as I've said
why?
Before. Why they did it at the time. The film completely fudges her politics. We are already making excuses for her in that early monologue, saying, oh, it was a different time. Everyone was interested in communism. It's like, well, they may have been interested, but they weren't necessarily going out of their way to leak secrets. So what prompts you to take this step? And the way the film answers that is it's like she's almost wanting to bring on nuclear stalemate. So she's like, if everyone has nuclear weapons, it's going to be safe and it's going to be fine. Now, I don't think... this is a fictionalized version of the true story, so you can say that if you want. I just don't think that's a particularly interesting character motivation. The film seems more interested in Joan as a woman in the workplace, and the fact that she's constantly underestimated by these very tweedy, pipe-smoking men that are around her who make jokes about making the tea, the tumble dryer. Oh, you'll be very interested in this.
Oh, we've got a new machine,
And because she's constantly underestimated by men, that allows her to get away with so much more. I think that would hold more water if the film wasn't constantly using romance as a way of G'ing the story forward, because she falls in love, she's interested in communism because she falls in love with a communist.
Then she's
interested
with the next guy.
with the professor, so that's how she gets access to the secret. So actually, it's very, very retrograde in that respect, even though it's making these overtures towards saying, oh yeah, we're going to talk about this as a woman in the workplace. I just think this is a film that totally misses its own point. You have Judi Dench, who has nothing to work with in those present tense scenes. The character motivations are so thin and so basic that she just has nowhere to take it. And while Sophie Cookson gives, I think, quite a convincing version of young Judi Dench, because she's good at affecting that sense of, still waters run deep. Mm-hmm. She's taking lots in, but she isn't necessarily bringing it all to the surface apart from very particular moments. Again, those parts of it feel like, as we said earlier, it's the sense of the Sunday tea time drama that somehow lost its way and ended up on a cinema screen. I think this is just an enormous, enormous missed opportunity. It's got this incredible true story at its core, which it completely fumbles.
I'd love to have had more of Judy in kind of almost like reflective mode. So she's actually telling you more about the story rather than the kind of flashbacks to the earlier times. So
and what's so odd about it is this is Trevor Nunn directing, a guy who knows the theatre inside out. So he, of all people...
Yeah, you've got Judi Dench.
Should be able to stage like Judi Dench in a room talking and make that exciting.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Oh well, Red Joan.